Hey everybody, welcome to Enhance Don't Distract podcast, episode number 46. Today we're going to be talking about integrator relationships, and I've got special guest Jon Ackerman on today. But before we get started, make sure you hit subscribe and go and rate the podcast. It really helps with everything. And I don't know if this music's super duper loud or not, so hopefully I can change that in editing. It's the first time I've done it, so we're going to talk about all things relationship-wise with your integrator and why you need an integrator and what it should look like. So let's add Jon in here. And I don't know, how loud was that music for you?
That was pretty loud, Justin.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Fix it in post, right? Isn't that what they say?
I really hope I can fix it in post. I mean, I can just re-record the intro if I need to.
There you go.
So I just got this Rode X Streamer X thing, and so I just made that intro music.
I love it. I love it. It was great intro music, man.
So I can turn it down apparently individually on the Rode Central, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah. Just roll with it.
Yeah. So Jon, I know me and you have very similar backgrounds. You're slightly older than me as your salt and pepper shares. I mean, only a couple of years.
Yeah, I hope.
Us redheads don't really get gray, so
you never age.
We just stay the same. It's because my soul never grows old.
There you go.
And we're gonna leave that comment right there.
Yes, we should. Yes, we should.
Give us a little bit about your background, and then we can kind of dive into the topic after that.
Yeah, so I am slightly older than you. I won't go into how old, but I spent 16 years working in churches all around the nation, big and small, in church, full-time church production. And so working with volunteers, discipling, fixing gear, running cables, building sets, installing new gear, putting all the old gear in back closets and pretending it doesn't exist. That was my whole world.
The graveyard. Yeah,
the graveyard. And then about 4 years ago, I had an opportunity to join the Mankin Media Systems team. And the rest has been really great.
Awesome. So Mankin Media Systems, obviously an integrator based out of Nashville. You guys service the entire nation, so it's not just local to Nashville. You actually live here in town with me, so that's super fun. So I think you were the perfect person I thought that I had a relationship with that could have this conversation with me based off of background and current employment. And so I think I wanted to start off with I guess, what is an integrator? Because I feel I referenced this Facebook group, and I know you're in there too, the church tech group, and there's tons of people in that group. I think there's 80,000 people.
Yeah, it's
so
crazy.
It's it generates a lot of content for this podcast because it's things that I'm oh yeah, that would make sense why a lot of people wouldn't understand what that is, or that would be a really good topic to talk about. And the number one thing is everyone tries to DIY. And some people are trying to DIY because they think integrators are really expensive. Some people DIY because they don't know that we exist at all. They don't even know that it's a thing. And you get those questions of well, how do I do this? And then it's really poorly described because they don't that's the level of understanding that they have.
Yeah.
So I think why don't you say, hey, what do you guys at Mankin Media Systems do, and why people would want to use you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, in my 16 years of working in churches, we went the whole gamut, right? From I have no budget and there's no way I could ever afford an integrator to the complexities of current modern AVL systems is so great that there was a knowledge gap between what I knew or anybody in my sphere of influence around at the church to what I knew that we needed to get done. There were also other things like liability and best practices and how do I make sure that the gear that I'm installing or the systems that I'm installing or designing as a church tech guy will outlive me for years to come. And so it's really a balance of those things. And so, from a really high level, an integrator is somebody who takes disparate pieces of gear, right? So your audio console and then your amps and a network switch, and they design usually a turnkey system, meaning they're going to design all the wires, everything between the audio console and the PA. And they're going to make
podcast about what a system is.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So all of that, they take all of that and they make magic and they make those complexities and they boil them down to a design intent, a parts list of every gizmo and widget, plates, cable lengths, pull sheets. Like it's not just a parts list and a couple of napkin CAD. There's a lot that really goes into that to make a fully baked system.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I first started dealing with integrators when I was at my church, and I remember going, hey, we want to do this video system. And it was like the first time I ever did like a camera like broadcast system. Mm-hmm. And so like I did as much research as I could do, but like, when you get on Blackmagic's website, like there's only so much information there, right? Because they're just trying to sell you products, right?
Right.
And so I remember like saying to our integrator at the time, hey, I want this. And I gave him part names. And he went, here you go. And I went, great. And then I was like, oh, well, I need this, and this to make this all function. Like, why did you not tell me this? Like, like I could have just bought this offline and gotten the same service. And like, there was like a pretty big contention there. And that was a big catalyst for me going, hey, I need to choose my integrator really wisely and understand, what it is that like we do and dive into that. So I think everything you said was perfect, right? Is like, we're here to go, hey, this is something we do all the time from multiple churches. So we have experiences of like, we have failures under our belt already.
Oh man.
Right.
That's the biggest growth opportunity for anybody, whether you're an integration or tech person, or you're just starting out as an intern, like asking people, hey, I know this is hard, but what was a failure in recent memory? And can I learn from that? That's a big part.
Yeah. We also have these successes, right? We also have the things that like aren't necessarily failures, but you go, man, I would have done that differently.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, we do that all the time. And it's like, I have this thing where I'll talk to clients where, they're like, oh, well, you sold us this piece of gear. Like, why do you not know this like the back of your hand? Well, it's like, well, I know this piece of gear pretty good, but like, this is not like, I'm not sitting down in front of this Allen and Heath console every single week, 5 times a week, mixing and knowing the inners and out of this, right? Yeah. I'm like, I'll call my rep who literally does that for a living, and they'll get the answer, or they'll do the training, to the next level of maybe something I can't do because it's like I could do it, but like they're going to do a better job of it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And, it's really easy to ask that question about a single piece of gear, but when you look across the landscape of what it takes to make a church facility function from an AVL perspective, there could literally be thousands of pieces of gear. And knowing all of the specs and the latest software, I mean, it takes an army of people to roll out one software update on a new console, and everybody can't know everything about that. That's why you have to have, as an integrator, we rely on those trusted relationships with our manufacturing partners.
Yeah. So at what point, I'm trying to like, we don't have tons of time just because we're kind of time locked. I want to like choose like the most important like conversation points. I guess at what point would you draw the line of DIY and calling someone like us?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with the individual person and the scope of the project, right? If you have the time and you're willing to take on the risk, there's a lot that production folks and power volunteers can take on. I mean, if you just need to hang a TV in a room and extend a video signal and audio signal to it, that's a perfect opportunity. But if you're looking at rigging, anything hanging overhead, if it's complex, pulling in a lot of divergent systems into one place, if it's big systems, a lot of those things, most churches don't have the staff, and there's a knowledge gap between what it really takes to do that. I think as well, it's about the time, right? You got to think about, yes, the church is paying you, and you don't see that as a thing that the church is spending. You're going to spend that time, and you're going to get, your salary one way or the other. But when you're crawling through a ceiling and pulling cable as a tech guy, that means you're not doing something else. You're not getting ready for the weekend, or worse, you're getting ready for the weekend, and you're taking time away from your family or rest.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you're also not being an engine of discipleship, right? You're not taking a volunteer out to coffee and asking them, hey, how's your walk with the Lord, or hey, let's talk about how you mixed audio this weekend. Those are all really important things that only you can do in your setting.
Yeah. No, that's really good. It's so funny because like the church I used to work at, like they used to have us do the install because they're like, well, you guys are all salary, so we're already paying you. So like that's money that we don't have to pay for this project.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, but none of like all the events still have to happen. No maintenance got done during this process of this. You know, we couldn't better anything. You know, I mean, technically, I guess an upgrade would be bettering something, but it's like we can't clean things up.
Yep.
You know that. You know all those kind of things. It's like, man, I would have much rather just paid someone to do this install.
And
you know?
and it's a huge liability, right? Like if you're asking staff to hang something overhead and they haven't been through rigging school, they don't have the proper equipment, they don't know what equipment is rated for or the proper rigging. You could actually physically or literally, your church could be liable and have a lawsuit if you don't do something. And nobody wants that, right? Your church leadership doesn't want that. Your congregation doesn't want that. So it's really about stewarding whatever funds you have available.
Yeah. I remember I had a client one time, they were like, yeah, we're going to do all this hanging. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I was like, I'm like, I would probably just hang it off threaded rod, to be honest with you. And they're like, that flimsy stuff? And I'm like,
yeah.
Do you know how much that way
that flimsy stuff can hold? Yeah.
And they're like, no. And I was like, I'm like 3/8 rod will hold like 1,500 pounds easy. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be hanging stuff if you
instead they got chain that isn't really meant to hang stuff like that. So
let's talk. I'm big on. For my company, I say like that my clients become like family. Like that's kind of like what I want to be with them. And that terminology can get a little wonky and salesy at times.
Yeah.
And like that's not my intent. But I think that when I'm talking about the topic of relationship, I think relationship is in my head like that's family, right? You have relationship with your family.
Absolutely.
I'm not talking necessarily like extended family. Like I think I have a relationship with my wife, right?
Yeah.
And my kids. And with that comes loyalty, respect, honor, those kind of things. And I feel like those are foundations of good relationships of any kind. And so when you start having clients, at what point, what level of loyalty should you as an integrator expect? What level of loyalty / respect should a client expect to give to their integrator, and receive from their integrator and so on and so forth? Like, because that's always a two-way street.
Right.
And like, at what point in time does that loyalty need to go away and be stopped?
Yeah.
Honestly, kind of on both ends of things, because you've been on both sides of
Yes, I have.
of that topic.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really comes down to, at least from what I've seen, it really comes down to the level of trust and transparency. So we have a saying around the office: transparency builds bridges of trust. Meaning, if you're the client and I'm the integrator, when you say I've got this much money and I cannot spend $1 more, then that is a transparent transaction to me. That if I come in above that, I've broken a little bit of trust. Like you would be thinking, man, I told him I only had whatever to spend, and now he's trying to push me. If I come in under,
unless you're asking for something that can't be done,
right? And in that case, as an integrator, it's my job to educate, and instill that trust and say, you asked for something, but your choices are really junky equipment that meet your standard, right? Technically, but it may not be the long play. We talk a lot about A decision or B decision or C decision, and we're always trying to encourage clients to make a decision, right? Yeah. So it's better to have less wireless mics, but to get the better network switch than to cheap out on the network switch just because you wanted an additional mic capsule, right? Like that's terrible. That's a terrible transfer of funds. As far as the loyalty aspect, from an integrator side, we're a business, right? Like I try to be really transparent about that. And one of our core values is sustainability, meaning I have to make enough money as an integrator that when you pick up the phone to call me in 3 years, I'm still around because I may be the only one that knows about your equipment. On the flip side, from a client, you may not have a lot of money. And so being available to have those discussions and be willing to say, okay, I had expectations up here, but in reality, I've got to lower my expectations or scope of the project.
Yeah.
And know that there will always be somebody who can do it cheaper. Right? Like you can find somebody somewhere that'll sell you a piece of gear at the lowest available price, or somebody that's selling a gray market, whatever, like B&H used to do that a lot with lenses, and, it's all European, but it was $50 less. And that's just really tough, right? Like as an integrator, you want to sell product that gets your clients the most bang for their buck. As far as loyalty, from a church side, I was always checking prices. Gear's a commodity. You can check most integrators' prices across a myriad of websites for most systems. And most integrators know that. And so they price to be competitive with what the going market rate is. So if you find that there's pieces and products that are more expensive as the church tech, you should just ask the question, well, why are you higher than the going rate? And then shut up and let them respond, because you may actually learn something about the product or something else.
So let me pause you there and ask you this question, because this is something that I deal with all the time, and I'm sure you do too, right? You just said that you most likely are priced similarly to a lot of the online retailers, right? Because most all of us, for outside of a handful of companies that do tiered pricing, on volume, we're all kind of buying at the same price within reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the question I get all the time, right? Hey, the Shure microphone you quoted me is $100, right? Sweetwater also has for $100.
Yeah.
I could click buy right now and it would be to me in 2 days.
Yeah.
If I buy that from you, I have to wait for you to invoice me, and then I have to pay that. Then you're going to ship it to me. It's going to be probably at least 4 days, sometimes maybe even a little bit longer.
Oh, it's going to be at least a week.
Right. Why would I buy that from you rather than Sweetwater?
Yeah. It pains me to say this, but there are times where it does not make sense to buy from an integrator, and that's okay.
100%.
I use this example all the time. I have clients that are like, hey, we need another DPA headset microphone to connect to our Shure wireless mic. And my response is, you should buy that off of Sweetwater. Because they do volume, they have stocks of everything.
Yeah.
We don't. We're an integrator, meaning we're going to take all of those disparate pieces of gear, make a system, and then hand it to you. Additionally, they're not carrying the cost that when you have a problem with that in a year from now and you have questions, they're going to say, hey, sorry, go look it up on YouTube. Whereas if you call, Justin, if a client calls you or calls me a year from now and says, hey, I bought this mic off of you, can I ask you some questions? We're gonna say, yeah, let's talk. Let's figure it out. Now that's easy with the wireless mic, right? But for more complex pieces of gear, a lot of times Sweetwater or others, they're gonna point you to an online resource, or they may try, but you're not gonna get the customized. We know you, we know how those systems are connected. And so let's help you troubleshoot and walk through that.
Yeah. And like you said, I have directed some of my clients in the hey, go buy from Sweetwater or buy from Amazon, where they're like, it's Monday afternoon and they're like, hey, our headset broke yesterday. Yeah. We need a new one, or we're not going to have a headset for Sunday. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, I can't guarantee you that I'll get it to you in time. You should just go buy that off, go buy that this way. Or I'll have clients where it's like, hey, can I get this from you? And it's like, well, you technically can, but the margin isn't really there. So you end up spending a little bit extra because it's like, I still have to make money off of it, type thing. You might as well just buy it off Amazon. Yeah. I have clients that buy cameras from me and they're like, well, I need SSDs for the cameras. And it's like, well, I mean, I can get them and I can sell them to you, but you're going to pay a little bit more than what you will on Amazon type thought process. Yeah.
And for onesie, twosie kind of things, I think that as a church production guy, that's you should feel the freedom to do that. There are other times where you want the backing. So on more complex systems or larger purchases, we as integrators, we want to earn your business when it makes sense for us as well. Additionally, you should think through the total cost of ownership. So the time it takes for you to do the research, then the purchasing, then the receiving from a church production standpoint to okay, what happens when something breaks? Who do I call? What do I do? All of that, versus if you have a trusted partner as an integrator, you can ask those questions beforehand. Hey, are these two things going to work together? And you've spent 5 minutes on the phone and you've given them a credit card or you pay via invoice, and it magically shows up a week later, whatever, or 4 days later. And you can, in that time, not be burning cycles on all of the other logistics involved with purchasing.
Yeah. The only other thing that I tell people for certain things is, well, if you buy that from them, have fun calling them on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Have fun calling Amazon on Sunday morning and asking them why your ATEM doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not me trying to be a jerk, right? It's just like, well, there's obviously most of the time, like when I do have clients that go, well, I bought this off Amazon. It's like, okay, well, did you check this? Did you check that? Because it's like, I can't just leave people hanging.
Right.
But it's like, there is a level of, and like, that's why I asked the question the way I did, right? What's the two-way street, right? I'm trying to educate people and go, listen, like if you're going to buy this from Amazon, I don't feel like it's a reasonable, good way or like a biblical way to then expect me to support a product that you didn't buy from me.
Right.
And I'm probably still going to do it because that's who I am.
Right. Right. And when you buy from an integrator, you're buying fractional ownership in the knowledge that they have. When you buy from Amazon, you are responsible. Or I use Sweetwater. They're great people. When I was an integrator, we ordered tons of stuff. I love the candy in the package. Like, great. All great things. No knock against them, right? There is a space and competition is good. But you're not buying their knowledge of you and your unique system and who your pastor is. Hey, don't buy it with that capsule. Buy it with this capsule, right? Because your pastor's a shouter and he loves to walk around and he's been known to run across the stage or whatever.
Yeah.
Like a rep online is not going to necessarily understand those things and help coach you and guide you to the right solution. So you're going to make a mistake. And that mistake could be an $800 mic, or it could be not realizing that the console doesn't have the connections you need. And now it's going to cost you an extra $6,000.
Yeah.
Like that's on you. Then you're taking that risk versus interacting with an integrator.
Yeah. All right. What's one of your biggest mistakes you've made as an integrator?
Oh, geez. I think probably one of the things that, do you want a specific case or just in general? Because I think there's a route for me personally. And that I think is trying to be too much of a people pleaser, like as a believer and then as a church worker, and trying to be a shepherder, like wanting to give them the right solution, but also trying to get them to like me, because I think that people, when they love your solution and they like you as a person and a company, then they'll buy from you. Yeah. But I think if I lean too much into that, it leaves the client lacking. Not lacking, but it leaves them wanting. As far as like an actual incident, there have been many times, I shouldn't say many times, there have been a few key times where I have like, in our quoting software, when you first load something, there's no price because they don't. So there have been a bunch of times where I've given people free gear. Like they sign the quote, it goes all the way through, it goes to our procurement team, they're ready to ship it out, and they're like, hey, you put in here 4 Blackmagic bidirectional converters. There's no price. I'm like, well, we just gave away $400 worth of. I can't go back to them. They signed it. They approved it. So it's probably been one of the most annoying things. And that has, we now have steps in place that I double check everything and I send it to myself and review it.
Luckily, I've never done that.
Oh, have fun with that one when you do.
I have definitely eaten a lot of shipping.
Yes. Same idea.
That's probably my biggest woe is like, oh, I just ate $800 worth of shipping. Yeah. Cool.
but that's what makes, I think, an outstanding integration partner, right? A long-term partner is people that are willing to say, hey, we're all going to mess up.
Yeah.
And when I mess up, I stand behind my product. And I think that even as hard as that is, as an integrator, to want to like find, not blame, but be like, well, we gave you this service and you didn't pay for it, but we need to be. A really great integration partner is going to say, no, I made the mistake. I need to own it. And congratulations.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing that you feel like clients like when let's say like church A comes to you as, John from Mankin and says, "Hey, we are, we're upgrading we're remodeling our sanctuary, we're building a new building, whatever it may be, right? And we need everything from A to Z, right? Starting from scratch." This is a twofold question. One, you have one type of client that says, "Hey, I want to bring in owner furbished equipment."
Yep.
And then
Happens
the other
all
one
the
is,
time.
yep. And then the second one is, I want to just buy everything brand new. What's the biggest thing in both of those scenarios that you say we need, and they go, "Well, I don't want to pay for that." Like, is that drawings? Is that education?
Yeah.
Is that like they want to use equipment that they shouldn't be using, that should get replaced because it's old? Like, what's the biggest thing that you feel like clients like for some reason get stuck on or just don't find value in, or
Yeah.
what is that?
It's almost always drawings. It's really tough. Not really tough. Some clients get it. Other clients are just blown away by the fact that somebody has to sit down, mark time off their calendar. A business has to carry the cost of all the software, hardware, staffing to create a drawing set and a parts list. And unfortunately, online retailers, I'm going to start stripping names out here. Online retailers make it really easy to see a piece of equipment and all the accessories and just click add to cart, add to cart, add to cart. That's not the same thing as figuring out how many BTUs does all of that equipment generate? How much electricity? How many network ports? How much power conditioning? And then render that to a rack elevation that lays all that out and understands, man, our venue just released a new distro 6 or distro 5 or whatever it is. So you don't have to buy they just released some smaller ones, half rack size. Yeah. Or maybe they had them for a while, but you can value engineer this instead of buying the larger one. All of that knowledge and time, and then how many SDI connectors do you really need? Right? Like you can buy them in bulk of 100, but like, do you need 300? Do you need 380?
Do you need SDI? Do you want to go 2110?
Oh,
right?
Stop. Now you're talking. All of that. And how do you go from A to B? And so, when it comes to what clients, they're willing, your church building committee is 100% willing to do civil engineering, electrical engineering, structural engineering, building engineering, interiors, all that. But when it comes to AVL, because they think it's like a computer that you can just buy a bundle and install it.
Yeah. Just walk into Best Buy and grab it and go.
It's 100% opposite. And I think that when I was a church tech person, I was doing everything in my power to help my pastor not see the complexities. And I think I actually, for 16 years, was headed in the wrong direction. I think I should have been saying, hey, this is super complex and I don't feel comfortable making some of these I'm not educated enough to make these decisions. Like, I need a trusted partner. So that on the new building, that's a big thing. And you need somebody to be there that's going to defend the AVL systems, right? Electricians and GCs are great at saying, why do you really need a 2-inch conduit? Let's just move that down to a 1-inch conduit and you can just pull cat cable. Well, they don't understand that you can't pull 10 cat lines in a 1-inch cable, right? Like, you have to have video and network and like all these different things. And you can only fill the cable up to so much. Or you should have a drawing that says, hey, no more than 290s before you have a junction box.
I was just going to say, why do I need so many junction boxes?
Yeah.
Well, because there's 7 90-degree angles in this pole.
And when I was a church tech guy, never even crossed my plate, never even thought about it. Like, we'll just figure it out. And I was hosed so many times on cable pulls.
Well, and I would say this, and the reason, I can tell you the reason why that is, because it was the same thing for me. How often when you were on staff at a church did you ever actually legitimately pull cable?
I mean, I pulled it all the time. Like, honestly, I pulled it all the time when I was on church because I thought it was the very best thing. But I was pulling it not through conduit. It was through like drop tile ceilings and like
right.
It was all over the place.
Right. But that's what I'm saying is like, I did the same thing, right? I would pull through drop ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was never doing a project from the ground up,
Right.
right? And so it's like I look at the church that I was at, and like some of the bigger, rooms in that building, there was so much conduit, right? And it was like, oh, why do we have so much conduit? That doesn't make any sense. Well, then it's like when we started upgrading things, it was like, oh, these 7 conduits are for this one system.
Yeah.
Because that conduit goes there, and that conduit goes there, and that conduit goes there, and that conduit goes there. And it's like I just got off the phone with a GC today. They're like, hey, so like I know that you're probably going to want conduit, in the ceiling and stuff like that, but like it's an exposed ceiling. Can you just do bridal rings? And I'm like, no, I can't do bridal rings. I'm like, if that's what I have to do, then yes, I'll do that. But it's like, you have no idea how hard it is to pull cable and how much more time it adds to pull through bridal rings rather than just having a guy on each end of a conduit, one pulling and one guiding.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm talking about. Somebody needs to sit in those architectural design meetings that usually happen weekly for an hour or 2 hours to listen for the time that the GC says, hey, we're going to put in a wire tray instead of conduit. And the integrator would stand up and say, if you do that, all of your cabling cost triples because it's now got to all be plenum rated cabling. So you saved $3,000, but your cable cost went up $10,000 and your labor cost went up $10,000.
Yep.
So congratulations, you saved $5,000 to spend 20.
Yep.
Like those are all things that have to be addressed.
I luckily had a GC on a project that I did last year where they were like, hey, we're running out of money under the stage. We want to do this. And I was like, well, won't that make the whole stage become an air return? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, all of the cable that needs to get pulled now needs to be plenum rated. Well, how much does that cost? I'm like, all the cable is 3 times as expensive.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what is that in dollars? And I'm like, you're going from like, I think it was like $4,000 to like, $12,000 and just cable on the stage because it's a smaller building. But it was like we were doing a lot of infrastructure for them to grow. And he was like, yeah, I'm only going to save like $4,000 doing it this way. So he's like, I literally will lose more money on the whole project doing it that way. And I was like, you sure will. So exact thing you just said happened. And luckily he was smart enough to be able to make a phone call and go, is this going to screw me?
And, coming back to the second part of that conversation that you brought up, Justin, the OFE, owner furnished equipment. It's all about risk mitigation, getting to the end of a project. And when a client says, here's a computer or here's a piece of gear that worked when we pulled it out, it sat on a shelf for 12 months and now is being installed. When something doesn't work, it's got to be overnighted because it's the week before and you're just handing it to me or whatever. It's a brand new machine, which is more expensive. And so you change orders just eat up so much contingency or money. And so it's really the client taking that risk. They're exchanging risk for money. And so there are times when it makes sense. If you just bought a brand new audio console or new wireless mics, absolutely, we should integrate those. But if you've got stuff or that room needs to still function, that old room, or you have a children's wing that should have gear, that's a great place to put all that owner furnished gear, upgrade their systems because generally they've had hand-me-downs as well. But get stuff that is going to be robust, and the hardest thing for church folks to understand is if there's big distractions or big issues in the sanctuary, other areas of ministry suffer, right? So parents, if they can't concentrate in their worship services, they're out and about and trying to get their kids or whatnot. So, making sure that the church is ready for that risk, no matter what it is important.
Last question, then we'll wrap up. Have you ever, and this is going to be a statement that a lot of people, when I have told people that I've had to do this in the past, they go, you can do that? And I go, yeah, I mean, it's pretty rare, but like I've had to do it before. Have you ever had to fire a client? And at what point do you make that decision?
I try really, really hard not to fire clients. Instead, we just basically begin to lessen not the services, but the grace that's extended to them.
The touch points.
Yeah. Well, not even the touch points, but like, hey, we really need this thing. Okay, great. The only way I'm going to do that is if this condition, and this condition are met.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
but last time you guys, um,
Overnighted
probably,
it
yeah,
and like came
overnighted
in.
it, and or hey, we didn't have you order the equipment and started sending it to us before we pay the invoice. Sorry, it's got to be 100% paid up front,
Yeah.
right? And
More
so,
more bookends.
yeah, more bookends, more guardrails. Only because at least for me, it's such a small community of integrators that are really, really solid that your reputation, it's hard to regain. And
Yeah.
even the churches that use integrators, it's not a huge community.
Yeah.
And so I try really hard, but there have been many clients where I have hung up on Zoom or a phone call and like went upstairs and told my wife that I'm ready to like fly there today and burn it all down. Not their church, not them, but like burn the relationship down.
Yeah.
So I try really hard. Now, if you were to ask me about church production, like I've had to actually, quote unquote, fire volunteers. And that's so tough, like talking to them as a human being, as an image bearer, and say, this is not the right spot for you, or your personality is in conflict with the values for our production team, and you should find somewhere else. Let me help you.
Yeah.
How about you?
I personally have only fired one client, and I fired that client off of advice that you gave me, actually.
Oh gosh. I hope that's good.
No, it was good because
Okay.
it was me and you had a conversation where you were like, I try really hard not to sell to like friends, like legit friends.
Yeah.
And this was like a legit friend, and it was I approached this client and said, listen, man, like our friendship means more to me than our business relationship.
Yeah.
And I feel like I keep getting overly frustrated or upset with you because of how the relationship on the business side was going. And I would rather just not have that be a thing. That's so wise, man.
Yeah. There's so much wisdom. A lot of people say don't mix business and pleasure, and that idea that like your friendships are way more important than business will come and go. Right. Like, but friends shouldn't, or at least shouldn't come and go because of business.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only one that I've personally fired. I worked for another integrator. We ended up firing a client because they the whole situation was just like not good on both sides. And it was like they did a bunch of stuff and we did a bunch of stuff that, like in hindsight, like both sides probably just should have done a better job.
Yeah.
And it kind of got to this point where we were like, my boss was like, nope, we're done with you guys. Sorry. Yeah. Like we've completed everything, all these other projects we're talking about and in the works of, we're just going to bow out and like have fun, call someone else.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. And
no.
I look back on that situation specifically and go, man, we could have probably handled that a lot better. And unfortunately, I wasn't the one technically handling it. So that's where it's like, it's even more difficult.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that I don't get why he handled it the way that he did. And it's like, I'm not blaming him saying that he like sucks or anything like that. It was just, it was a crappy situation. But yeah.
I think on the flip side, like from if I could coach those church folks that are watching, being a really good client means just like responding to stuff, right? Like we as integrators, like we have a lot of clients that we're handling, and so if there's an expectation that when you call us that we answer within a business day, or we give you our, I give all my clients my cell phone number. They know that they can reach me. And the best clients are the ones that are like, I'm so sorry, I'm calling at 5. I know you're in Eastern time or whatever. Yep. But can we just have a quick phone call? Oh man, those clients that respect me as a person, me as a salesperson, our business and my family, like those are great. And so if you have expectations of your integrator, I would just say, like, put a mirror in front of you and say, do I have those same expectations of myself? And if you do, then awesome. Then that's wonderful. You're going to be a great client.
Yeah. The thing that I always say to clients is like, I don't say this to the client. I don't say like, hey, if you want to be a good client to me, like do this, right? But I say this to a client, and I think this makes a good client, right? Is when, obviously like me and you both have lots of jobs that are going on all the time, right? And so it's like there's sometimes I'm not making as many touch points with clients that they want, right?
Right.
And they're like, well, I want to know what's going on, but like they don't ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
They're the assumptions. Yeah.
Right. And then they don't ask, and they don't ask. And it's like, well, you know, we ordered everything and we're just sitting here waiting for everything to come in. Right.
Yeah.
We had this discussion. Right. Yeah. And like, I usually will try and do, like, depending on the size and scope and how long things are, you know, because like I've had things where it's like, okay, hey guys, listen, it's 4 months to get this product.
Right.
I'm probably not going to update you every week.
No.
Right.
Not at all.
I try and do like, hey, same ETA once a month.
Yep.
Right. And then as we get closer, you know, then that changes. But I've had clients where they're like, well, I haven't heard from you in 3 weeks. And like, they've like let that fester and become like irritating to them. And then they're mad at me. And it's like, what do you want me to call and tell you? Like
the same thing.
The same thing over and over. And it's like, I wish you would have just emailed me and said, hey, do we have an update? I know it's only been a couple weeks, but is it still the same? I would have responded with, yeah, we have the same ETA. I'll let you know in 3 more weeks. Right. Yeah. That's a super quick, easy email for me to answer. But it's like, I'm not thinking I have to make sure that I update these people every single, you know, all the way. And, you know, sometimes like it is me dropping the ball. Right. And just like missing because I'm juggling 17 things. And, you know, I'm human and that happens. But yeah, don't let things fester. Like if you have a question or want to know, shoot an email. Yeah. Shoot a text.
100%. Yeah. And remember that your project is your, you know, precious baby bird right in the nest and it's growing. But we've got 40 or 50 other precious baby birds that we're working with. Right. And we're trying to protect them all. I mean, we would not be, you know, Mankin's been around much longer than I've been doing this, but every single one of the projects, whether they've returned to us or moved on.
What are you talking about? Ben's only like 27 years old.
Yeah. Yes, he is. No, he's not. Anyways, you know, we're trying to maintain all of those relationships, and that's hard. I mean, I'm a highly relational guy. I love talking with people. Yeah. I think it's what helps me be successful. But it's hard to remember everybody's life story all the time and to remember the exact specifics. And so, you know, I think, Justin, it's up to you and I to help foster those things and put practices. But I think that translates back to church. Like, you've got volunteers, church folks. Like, you should know their stories. You should know their families. Hey, somebody went through something hard 2 weeks ago. I should probably put it into a natural rhythm to reach out to them in a week or two and ask them how they're doing. I think those are translatable, right? As far as production folks and integration folks, same values.
I do that with my friends.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like the client that I ended up firing, like his mom ended up in the hospital, and it's like every couple of weeks hey man, how's your mom doing? Is she doing okay? Yeah. And you know, like he'll do the same thing. Hey, how's your son? Right. You did it when we got on here. Hey, how's your kiddo doing? You know, so yeah, I think that's a good like thing to add into that whole relationship.
100%.
All right, man. Well, we are out of time. Yeah. How can people reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, go to mankinmedia.com, or you can email me, or you can email probably sales@mankinmedia.com is the other way to get a hold, instead of me spelling out my first and last name and everybody butchering it. But I'm sure you have show notes as well, Justin. You're more than welcome to put other information in there. But yeah, would love to talk. Talking's free, right? And so would love to hear more about the hopes and dreams of churches in need or think they need an integrator.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. It really does mean the world to me. And don't forget to hit subscribe and comment down below. Let us know. Have you experienced any of the things we just talked about, or do you have more questions? And then obviously, like Jon said, I'll put his contact info in the description. You can always reach out to me as well, and we'll kind of go from there. So thank you so much. Until next time, I'm Justin. Keep on enhancing.